Happy Friday and Merry Christmas. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop with you on this Friday. We got tons to tackle. Holy cow. We'll talk about the FOID card appeals oral arguments that took place yesterday. You can watch those yourself. We can't rebroadcast them, though, even though it's on YouTube. You can go find the 4th District Court of Appeals. We'll tackle that. Also, we'll share a conversation with John Bach from Gun Save Life, the plaintiffs in that case. We also got to talk about nearly 300 new laws that go into effect January 1st. No, we're not going to go through all 300 of them, but we will give you some of the highlights and the different kinds of categories of our existence being impacted by Illinois laws going into effect January 1st. We also have to get to the latest of what's going on in the Madigan corruption trial, so stay tuned for that. We'll talk with Jim Talamonte out of Chicago with the Center Square. He's been in the courtroom all week and for the past 11 weeks, 12 weeks, as the defense in Madigan's case begins. So we'll tackle that as well. What else we got going on? Oh, yeah. Up next, we got to get to the fact that Illinois' population increased last year, but that increase was driven by the 113,000 people who moved to Illinois from other countries. That offset the 56,000 or so that moved from Illinois to other states. So we got to get to that next. But it is Illinois in Focus Daily. Live to tape each and every weekday morning here. And a little bit of a programming note. Next week, I am going to take some days off. I think we're going to do a show on Monday. But then Tuesday, Wednesday, might come back Thursday. But then I'm taking off Friday and Monday and Tuesday of the following week. So just a little bit, it's going to be kind of scattershot here with America's Talking Network with the live show for Illinois in Focus Daily. But subscribe, hit that notification bell when you want to know we're going live. Typically 8 o'clock weekday mornings here with Illinois in Focus. But don't just get the live show, get the headlines in your inbox. Go to thecentersquare.com. If you click states, you'll find Illinois, but you can also get to the newsletter and sign up for that. Just some of the headlines from today. Of course, we'll talk about the Madigan case a little bit later on. New report out of Reason Foundation shows that there's over $200 billion in total liabilities for Illinois. You can get that story. Electric school buses. State of Illinois funneling federal tax dollars. $19.9 million for electric school buses. You can go read about that story. And, Lion Electric obviously was criticized last week. The electric school bus maker not performing well. Could they possibly be in line for some of those taxpayer funds for school buses? Again, you can read up on that. You've got other stories about the economy and how Illinois businesses are faring. So go get that. And also the quick hits, quick digestible little blips. Another $820 million going to sustainable aviation fuel. Some of the stories you'll be able to get by subscribing to the Center Square's newsletter each and every weekday morning. All right, it is Illinois in Focus Daily. Stay tuned. We've got a lot to get to, including the census stuff, which is pretty incredible to look at. So we'll review those numbers here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and be with us each and every weekday morning here with America's Talking Network.
And the big news is this, I would call the big illegal immigration census count. Well, it's not an authentic way to grow in population. If you look at the net numbers, and we've seen them all along, we're losing our wealthiest people. we're losing net people overall to other states.
So Ted Dabrowski with Wire Points chatted with him yesterday, moments after the U.S. Census Bureau released numbers showing Illinois gaining population, but driven by people moving to the state from other countries. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. After a decade of decline in population, Illinois increasing in population for the first time in 10 years. We went through this yesterday, and we're asking ourselves, well, what's exactly going to happen? Are we going to get these new U.S. Census numbers, and we're going to see that continued loss of population? We've lost a seat in Congress. That impacts how much federal dollars we get. But the numbers came out yesterday, the vintage 2024 numbers for the past year ending July 1st, 2024. And it shows that Illinois gained population by nearly 68,000. So let's go ahead and pull up the spreadsheet here. This is from the U.S. Census Bureau. And you can see these numbers. They break down total population change, vital events like natural change or births or deaths. Then they go into net migration. And net migration, you've got the total, but there's that category international, which I think is important, we'll have to highlight, and also the domestic migration. Then you get kind of a 4-year breakdown of sorts of just where exactly these states land and how many people they've gained or lost in the past 4 years. So let's go find Illinois. All right. So Illinois obviously has been losing population for some time. But if you check out Illinois' numbers here, we'll kind of have to bounce around. But Illinois gained 67,899 people. All right. So that's the total population change. But then you look at some of the vital events, and you can compare those numbers, births versus deaths. But then let's get back to this category here, net migration. For domestic migration with a negative number, that means Illinois had 56,235 people leave the state for other states. But then this line, the international net migration, 112,955. So nearly 113,000 people moved to Illinois from other countries, offsetting the number of people who moved out to other states by 56,235. That was offset by the 112,955, calculating the births and deaths and everything. That's where you get the total net increase of 67,899. Total population for Illinois is about 12.71 million people now. And the obvious increase showing that Illinois having growth, but driven by migration from other countries. If you look at the 4-year average, a different set of numbers, but it shows Illinois over the past 4 years, cumulatively losing population. So even though we gained population in the last year, over the past 4 years, Illinois has lost 111,000 people in the last 4 years. So even in the past year, gaining 113,000 non-citizens or people moving from other countries, because that could be a lot of people, not just those who cross the border illegally, not just asylum. It could be a lot of people they're counting. They're just counting heads and beds, essentially, right? So you've got over the past 4 years, Illinois still losing population despite having gained in the last year. I talked with WirePoint's president, Ted Dabrowski, about this. And he says the top issue here is, well, the net migration from other countries. Let's do it and go.
We may have broken the decade of decline, but for the only reason is that we had a massive international immigration numbers come in, and the census changed how they're doing things. They have this vintage report, and the big news is this I would call the big illegal immigration census count. You had California, New York, and Illinois, 3 big losers over the last decade, suddenly gaining population, and it's all due to the way they're counting now illegal immigrants. So we had a gain of 113,000 in illegal immigration, in international immigration. And that's the big swing for us and for the other states who are suddenly gaining population.
Now, we still had people move out, as I mentioned, 56,000 plus, but that was offset by the 113,000 moving in from other countries.
Yeah, we still had 56,000 net people leave Illinois, the third worst net out migration loss to other states, again, behind California and Illinois. So we still, between California and New York. We're still having that out-migration problem. It's not as bad as it was, and I think there's still going to be some resettling of people moving between states after COVID. So that's probably some of that. But yes, we still have that outmigration problem of losing people to other states, offset, of course, by this new massive increase in illegal immigrants and, of course, international immigrants.
Now, Democrats in the state of Illinois, despite having seen annual estimates every year showing the state was losing population, with the exception of last year, numbers just released yesterday showing gaining population, but for 10 years before that showed lost population, Democrats denied that. They were, some argued, population deniers. What about now? Dabrowski reflecting on what he thinks Democrats possibly could do, but is it a good thing?
Oh, they'll play it up. They're going to say, "See, we told you." I think instead, what Governor Pritzker should be doing is thanking Governor Abbott for sending all those people up this way. That's the real reason, as we can see, as to why we grew in population. It has nothing to do with our net policy issues, where we still continue to lose Illinois residents to other states on a net basis. So, and it's the same thing for California, New York. They're suffering the same problems of losing people. It's just that this massive. Also thank President Biden for opening up the floodgates of the border. Right. That's the only reason we grew in population.
And Dabrowski pointing to that, but it shows, if you look at the numbers, and we'll pull this up again, New York, if you highlight their cross-section and then find the immigrant international migration, they had as well 207,000 people offset the 120,000 people that left the state of New York. California, it's the same scenario, different totals, but you have, pulling this up, 361,000 people from other countries move into California, offsetting the 239,000 people who left California for other states. Migration, is it a good thing or a bad thing? Question I asked Dabrowski to expand on.
Well, it's not an authentic way to grow in population. If you look at the net numbers, and we've seen them all along, we're losing our wealthiest people. We're losing net people overall to other states, right? And that shows whether people want to stay here or not, and they've chosen not to. And so, if the only way we can grow population is to open up the floodgates and have, and again, my parents were both immigrants to this country. My father from Poland, my mother from Ecuador. I'm a lover of immigration, legal immigration, and done properly. But when you open up the floodgates and you invite a lot of people who don't have the means, who don't have the education, certainly maybe don't speak the language. It's a tough way to try to replace wealthy or productive citizens from Illinois who move to other states and then replace them with lower income, struggling immigrants. It's a tough thing, especially many of them will be dependent on government.
And Dabrowski's obviously an analyst who's looked at these numbers for quite some time, and he also looks at other migration data, including data from the Internal Revenue Service, showing the number of people who are moving from one state to the next and how much of their taxable income they're taking. And those numbers come out in the summertime. In the most recent numbers that came out this past summer, it showed Illinois losing about $10 billion of taxable income because people were moving out of the state. That data, Dabrowski contends, even if we gained population, may not be impacted much at all.
Oh, yeah. I mean, no, you can easily see net dollars leaving the state. I mean, the average, I'm going to do this a little bit from memory, but the average income of those leaving Illinois, based on the IRS data, was about $140,000, and the ones coming in were far less than that. So we were, just on a trade of people, we were net losing incomes, right? And then not only that, then we have the net loss of people. So yeah, we lost $10 billion. Maybe it'll be a little bit better, but maybe not. It could be worse. But it's our tax base that we need to worry about as well, given all the pension discussions we seem to be having, in other discussions where that problem is coming back. So. We need the tax base, not we can't afford to lose it.
Dabrowski, giving us some final thoughts on this overall situation. Again, Illinois gaining population, but being driven by people moving to the state from other countries. Final words from Dabrowski.
This is not something to celebrate. This all has to do with President Biden not closing the border and allowing massive influx of illegal immigrants, and Illinois benefited from that. And benefited from the fact that Governor Abbott sent busloads of people here. It's not the way to grow population. It's and let's not forget, while while we're looking at this growth in population, places like Texas and Florida gained 500,000 each in population. So, no matter what we show, we're so far behind the other big states, right? We're the sixth largest state in the country. We're not keeping up. That has a lot to do then with how much federal money we get back in terms of state benefits, and also in terms of representation in Congress. The bigger those states get, and the further we fall behind, the more representation we lose in Congress. And we've seen that massive decline in that over the decades.
And Illinois having lost a lot of seats in Congress because of population decline. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. Breaking the decade of decline, but driven by net migration from other countries in the state of Illinois. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and wake up with us each and every weekday morning here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Get the podcast where you get podcasts. As we prepare for a live guest, Jim Talamonte will join us in moments. Live to tape. We'll get to that in a moment. Thanks for your patience.
The savage that representative from Kwame's office just savaged her with her talking points.
It's Friday, ladies and gentlemen. What do you expect?
Garmin just savaged that representative from Kwame's office, just savaged her with her talking points and just outright calling her incorrect to some of her assertions. It was brutal listening to that, and I feel sorry for her. She's probably having a drink right now after coming out of court on that, because she got creamed.
John Bach, Gun Save Life Executive Director, after yesterday's District Court of Appeals hearing on the challenge of Illinois' firearm owner identification card law. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and be with us each and every weekday morning here. Let's get into it. Yesterday, the 4th District Court of Appeals for Illinois State Court heard the challenge Gun Save Life versus Kwame Raoul. And the oral arguments were live streamed, and you can actually find those still at the YouTube channel of the 4th District Court of Appeals for Illinois. We just can't rebroadcast them. They have a provision, duplication not allowed, something to that effect. Either way, you can watch that yourself. I'm going to go through some of the highlights, and then we're going to share some of what John Bach had to say. So for Gun Save Life, their attorney, Clark Hildebrand, said that the states must show historical tradition, and they didn't. They said Illinois' law would have been an outlier during the founding era of 1791. He went on to talk about the steps that they have to take part in these challenges of gun rights. He said step 1 looks at whether or not the firearm regulation impacts the plain text to keep and bear arms. Possessing is squarely within the plain text of the Second Amendment, the attorney said, and that's all that's required. And the second step, and see whether there's historical comparisons from 1791 or even later, comparable, that puts a premonition on existing rights for possessing firearms. The law, the states cite to try to back up their historical analogs were loyalty oath laws or laws disarming Catholics. But when the Second Amendment was ratified, it was clear that those were nonsense and you can't disarm political opposition and such. So he goes on to have a bit of back and forth with some of the justices, the panel of appellate justices. They talked about the Supreme Court's looking at laws prohibiting felons, but those are individuals who've been adjudicated, meaning gone through the courts, and court has determined somebody to be a prohibited person, so they made that pretty clear. Some of the judges asking questions as well, and then it was time for the state, on behalf of the Illinois State Police, Jane Eleanor Knott, to give their arguments, saying that the appeals courts should affirm the district court's ruling that this is a case that needs to be dismissed. But it was interesting to see the judges, the 3-panel judges, asking questions. But to the argument the state was making, they said preemptive prohibition is based on a preceding threat. Felons, mentally ill, and those not taking loyalty oaths. That seemed to be where they were kind of coming from with their arguments. But you can't use the unconstitutional loyalty oaths to keep people from exercising their rights. She said that the FOID Act is a mechanism to identify those that the government has deemed dangerous and a risk of using firearms. The plaintiffs opposed that, saying no matter how small, you can't infringe. Then they started arguing about the precedent in Bruin and if that dealt with licensing schemes for possessing out in public or for possessing in home. One of the judges was really going aggressively trying to get more out of the attorney, but said that she wasn't wanting to answer the questions, but it would go a lot faster if she did. That's almost a direct quote there. They also talked about the issues of when government can regulate things. The attorney said governments can regulate to seek and keep firearms out of the hands of people who are dangerous, therefore likely to misuse them. That applies to public carry and at home, they said. But the judge again pushed back and said that's not what precedent has set out. The pre-existing right was the right for all people to possess firearms. Even the judge said. And then they went back and forth and talked more about the difference between, felons who have been found to be felons by a court versus just the general public. But then it was time for the rebuttal. And the rebuttal, they came back and essentially said that the FOID Act operates to make it a crime for an individual to have a firearm in their home unless they pay the state for that constitutional right. The plaintiff's attorney on rebuttal said that it would essentially be unconstitutional for everyone to have to go pay the state a fee if they want to post an unpopular opinion online and then have to wait 30 days to post that unpopular opinion online once they get permission and a card from the government. Same thing with praying at home with the family. You don't have to go and pay the government to get a ID after 30 days. Then you can go pray with your family at home. So interesting arguments being made. And then the judge that was really cross-examining the state, talking about about the intrusion on somebody's Second Amendment rights, he asked the plaintiff's attorney, what about that minimal intrusion? Does it matter the level of intrusion? And the plaintiff's attorney fired back and said any intrusion, doesn't think how minimal, making it a criminal if they don't comply, making them go through a process and the Second Amendment doesn't allow, doesn't matter the level of burden. There's an infringement, even if the state thinks it's minimal. So that's just some of the arguments that was made. Again, you can go and watch the whole thing yourself at the 4th District Court of Appeals YouTube channel. But I chatted with main plaintiff, John Bach with Gun Save Life, about the overall hearing. And he feels that they got a favorable panel on this. Dan, let me get this fired up. Make sure we're good and golden. And go.
I think we got a fair panel. I think the panel really put the wood to the state's attorney trying to argue and conflate issues and misrepresent some footnotes from Supreme Court opinions, say, in Bruin, or decisions, rather, in Bruin. Ultimately, though, if you step back and look at the big picture, it doesn't matter who wins or loses here. Whoever loses is going to appeal to the Illinois Supreme Court. And we all know that J.B. Pritzker, in essence, bought at least 2 of the Supreme Court currently seated here in Illinois. And I am not sure that they won't try to twist themselves into pretzels and create new legal arguments to legitimize the FOID card, even though clearly there's no historical precedent whatsoever for something like this in the colonial times.
So Bach, after himself listening to the oral arguments, indicating, may have had a fair panel, but regardless of how this ends, it's going to go to the Illinois Supreme Court, noting that 2 of those justices took $1 million each when they were running for the Supreme Court from Governor J.B. Pritzker. So we may hear more about this whole situation if it ultimately does go to the Illinois Supreme Court, but it could even go further. What about the U.S. Supreme Court?
Oh, absolutely. I think if the Illinois Supreme Court played stupid with this or doubled down on stupid, I think we would be filing a brief with the U.S. Supreme Court asking for certiorari. And I think there's more than a fair chance that they would accept it because clearly there's no historical precedent for this. And this is very much an outlier from the other states. And I think the Supreme Court would take the case and we'd, I think, get a favorable outcome on it. But it's going to take 2 or 3 or 4 years for all that to happen. But the good news, Greg, the good news is that the other side has been playing a delay game for years now. And they've been hoping to outlast the conservative members of the U.S. Supreme Court to have them either die or retire and be replaced with Joe Biden appointees or people of similar ilk. Well, Joe Biden dropped out of the race. Kamala got creamed. And the Republicans now have control of the Senate to approve nominations. So the courts, starting in January, each successive month, are going to become more and more friendly to gun rights down the road. And that includes the U.S. Supreme Court. As for health reasons or other retirements, the court's liberal justices maybe decide to throw in the towel.
Meanwhile, you've got another case out of Maryland challenging Maryland's gun ID laws that could be in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. We talked a bit about that yesterday. But more to yesterday's hearing about Illinois' firearm owner ID card. I asked
that would be beneficial.
I asked John Bach about the issue of how much of an infringement is allowable, right? There at the tail end, you had the plaintiffs in the oral arguments say that any amount of infringement is unconstitutional.
Well, it's all relative. You give them an inch, they take a mile. That seems to be the policy of the state of Illinois. It's just they keep coming for more and more and more. And the courts, in the Bruin decision, and judges in general are pushing back against that, and the state's not liking it. And the judge, DeArmond, just savaged that representative from Kwame's office, just savaged her with her talking points, and just outright calling her incorrect at some of her assertions of what the footnotes said in some decisions and what the decision said. It was brutal listening to that, and I feel sorry for her. She's probably having a drink right now after coming out of court on that because she got creamed, and I've never seen an oral argument get that testy and rough for either side's counsel, but they Judge DeArmond, he really hammered her big time on her talking point stances and how the state's trying to conflate different holdings and so forth. It was brutal, and I got to admit, I had a little smile on my face the whole time.
You can go watch that again yourself with the 4th District Court of Appeals for Illinois in their oral arguments yesterday in Gun Save Life v. Kwame Raoul. But any bets? I asked Bach. I'm not sure if he's a betting man. Is he going to place any bets on how the appeals court comes out on this?
Yeah, I think it's right down the middle. We'll see. But ultimately, Greg, it comes back that whoever loses here is going to go to the only Supreme Court, and that's the one that really kind of counts. And if they screw it up, we'll take it to the U.S. Supreme Court and let the U.S. Supreme Court have a shot at deciding this once and for all. But we'll see. Maybe they'll do the right thing. I'm skeptical and cynical, but maybe they'll do the right thing.
We'll be watching. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, wake up with us each and every weekday morning, and get the headlines in your inbox at thecentersquare.com. Stand by. Just a programming note, I think we're going to have to postpone doing the conversation about nearly 300 new laws for Monday. So join us Monday for that conversation. But we're going to connect here live with Jim Talamonte, double check everything. We'll do it live. We'll do it live. All right. Stand by. A little behind the scenes for those watching live. What's up?
Check 1 2, check 1 2, check.
Oh, we got you. Checking that microphone.
Oh, good.
Stand by. Here we go.
Okay, sounds good.
Good, how are you? Any holiday plans, gentlemen?
A lot of work. Any holiday plans? And the McLeans say they're going back home.
Oh, good. Have a good one.
Jim Talamonte's been in Chicago for weeks. It's where he lives. It's where he works. And he's been in a courtroom up in Chicago for weeks as well. And he joins us now to give us the latest before they head to their holiday break. Jim, obviously, a lot of people have been watching this from afar. You've been in there, seeing the jury, seeing the defense, seeing the the prosecutors. We've now entered this phase of the defense providing their position. What have we heard so far from the defense in this case?
Well, just one witness from McLean's team, and that was Steve Selke, a former AT&T executive, who the prosecution didn't call him, and so the defense did, and but I don't know how much he helped their cause. He really didn't. I don't know that he did too much to help, given that a lot of the AT&T stuff is pretty strong. Most of it not through recordings, but through emails. And so there was a lot of strong evidence put in by the government before it rested its case. And then Selke came in and testified yesterday. And that was it for McLean. In fact, Patrick Cotter, the lead attorney, rested his case before the judge did his inquiry of McLean to remind him that he had the option to testify. We figured all along he wouldn't, and so at the very end of the day yesterday, after the Madigan team began its presentation, McLean did take the oath and formally say he's waived his right to testify. His lawyers have informed him of the advantages and disadvantages. Routine stuff, but
Right.
it kind of went out of order yesterday. So,
Well, so
just one witness.
are they going back and forth, or is McLean's defense done?
McLean's defense is done. It was one witness. It was over part of Wednesday, and I mean, not even a full day. It was
So what?
a late start.
But boil it down for us. What did you hear was the defense? Did the defense attorneys come out and say this is just regular run-of-the-mill type stuff?
Essentially, I think that they were there was, as part of the McLean team's theme, has been that this isn't bribery, that these aren't exchanges, that this is the way things work, and that it wasn't that the AT&T wasn't forced to do this to hire Eddie Acevedo, and that trying to kind of make it sound like that because he was assistant majority leader and part of the Latino caucus, that was his work, was to kind of be a voice in the Latino, that it wasn't a total do nothing, even though he did nothing. It wasn't really a do nothing. So I don't know how effective that was. One reporter in the courtroom said that talking about the first two defense witnesses, Selke from AT&T from the McLean team, and then Andrew Cretal, who was a developer of a project in Chicago that got a lot of attention during the Daniel Solis testimony, the former Chicago alderman, that he said, well, boy, the first two witnesses have done more harm to the defense than help. Wow. And so that was just one reporter stuff, but a couple people agreed with that in the media contingent covering this.
But bottom line, you've got McLean not saying, "Hey, it was Madigan. It was all Madigan." He didn't fall on the sword, or not fall on the sword, but didn't throw Madigan under the bus. He seems to have more kind of just said, "Hey, this is just run of the mill stuff."
And I think a number of us, certainly some of the experts I've talked to who followed a lot of this, thought that might be part of the play, that the Madigan side will say this was McLean acting on his own. The McLean side saying, well, he's just following orders from the boss. But it really hasn't. I wouldn't say they're working together. We've seen almost very little interaction.
How close together are they from each other in the courtroom? Are they on opposite ends of the table?
Tables.
Oh, they're on separate tables.
Yeah, Madigan's got his own table with 5 attorneys and himself.
Wow.
And then the next table over is McLean, but Madigan's kind of at the front end, closer to the judge, and McLean's more toward the back end with his. Yeah. There's been almost very little interaction that I've seen between them. One or two times a brief acknowledgement, but not. We haven't seen them, and perhaps this is intentional, so it doesn't look like they're conspiring together. But I thought they've been
entering the courtroom separately as well. I mean, you've been there every morning watching them come in and whatnot.
They come in from separate directions. McLean comes from the north, and Madigan, and always surrounded by at least a couple of his attorneys, will come in from the south, and so that at different times and from different directions they enter, and then go in separately as well into the courtroom.
Talking with Jim Talamonte, reporter for the Center Square, in the courtroom of Mike Madigan. Again, Madigan and McLean facing 23 charges of corruption for allegedly using Madigan's public office for personal gain. And the defense has started. So Madigan's defense has started, but as they were revving up, they are taking, how many days of a break here before you have to be back with the jury?
Yeah, the jury doesn't have to return until January 2nd. Next week was a planned off week. Then the week of New Year's, the judge is going to have a charge conference, attorneys and parties only, on the 30th, and that's it for that week. Because with the holidays, then you run into Friday, which is an off day, except when we get to deliberations. So, but we're kind of left hanging a little bit in that the third person called by the third witness called yesterday by the Madigan team, David Ellis, Justice Ellis as defense attorney
that's
Todd Pugh would
right.
address him every time. So only in Illinois, I guess, you go from being chief counsel of the speaker directly to becoming an appellate judge.
And then being a witness in a corruption case. And it's not just this judge. It's, a sitting congresswoman, a slew of former state lawmakers, not charged and charged, and lobbyists. And, it's pretty remarkable just to see all the names that are popping up here on this. And even those who, Bob Rita, we've been talking about him. Elena Hampton, we've been talking about him. Those names didn't pop up in all of this. I mean, Rita testified for 10 minutes, and then that was requested to be struck from the record.
Yes, so it's as if he was never there.
Wow.
The judge asked the jury that Bob Rita will not be appearing. Please strike that from the record.
Wow.
He had said everything went through the speaker, but we've had a number of witnesses say that. So I don't know how impactful it really is. Whether. But he's just another character in the whole scheme, and as all these people from ComEd and AT&T, and you just, I will look. Ever since this trial started, I look at my electric bill a little bit differently.
Yeah,
How about you?
ComEd was just approved for like a $600 million rate hike or something like that. It's integral. People understand the inner workings of how legislation impacts you every day. It's not just the taxes you pay. It could very well be the utility rates you pay, cell phone fees you pay, all of that. So Jim Talamonte obviously will be talking more about this because the defense, even though they've started, it could still be some time before the jury gets this, and then we're into the new year and the jury's going to come back and hear more of the defense. So we're still weeks away from possibly seeing this resolved.
Not too long. I think, well, maybe. I think the judge was trying to get an idea for closing arguments because he said once deliberations start, he's got other things to schedule in his courtroom.
Yeah.
He's a pretty busy guy, this Judge Blakey. So I think we're looking at mid-January for deliberations.
Wow.
And then it's in the jury's hands.
And it's just waiting and seeing what happens there. But I do encourage people, read Jim's daily story about what's going on in the courtroom because there's a lot of flavor there, including a juror saying, hey, are we going to be done by Super Bowl? Because I paid a lot of money for these tickets to go see them. And if we're still in, I kind of, SOL.
If you had asked me a month ago, I'd have said, boy, I think that's in trouble because we were really the Daniel Solis part, which was, again, the big, juicy, especially here in Chicago, all the coverage of but it didn't go as long as we thought it would. The prosecutors were very efficient, and the cross-examination, Dan Collins, Madigan's attorney, so it's going to be a long cross, but it really wasn't that long. Wow. He wasn't on the stand any longer than Fidel Marquez, another convicted former cooperating witness. So it's what a group of characters we've had here. No
kidding. Jim Talamonte, greatly appreciate it, and we'll talk again about this in the future, no question. But I'm stunned by your resilience. Because it's not easy. It's not easy hearing all of this, being able to track it all and keep everything straight. So you've done an incredible job. Get Jim's latest at thecentersquare.com. Appreciate it. We'll talk again, all right?
Thanks, Greg.
It's Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and wake up with us each and every weekday morning here as we break down what's going on in the state so you can get your day going right here with America's Talking Network. Get the podcast where you get podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus, and you'll find it. And don't forget the newsletter in your inbox each and every weekday morning with thecentersquare.com. I appreciate your patience with me today. A few little blips and blurps and technical things, but hey, it's Friday. What do you want from me? Monday, we will be here, all right, just because I want to talk to you about the nearly 300 laws that go into effect January 1st. Some really interesting stuff, some stuff impacting you, impacting health insurance, parents' rights, a whole host of things. E-cigarettes. So you're going to want to see the show Monday morning. We'll break that down for you. Also, we got to give you some of the preview of Lame Duck, because after the Christmas holiday, after New Year's, you've got the legislature coming back to Springfield for Lame Duck. What could they possibly do? Still very much up in the air, but we'll do our best prognostication with it. So have yourselves a wonderful weekend, and join us Monday. We'll be live for Illinois in Focus Daily.
Bye.